Welcome back, everybody. I'm Cody Gann.
I am Chris Brewer.
And you are on the Hunt Experience.
Episode number 2.
Number 2. So today, we just kind of wanted to introduce ourselves and tell a little bit about who we are and where we're from. And
who are we?
That's a good question to ask. You know, we get that. People probably look at us and think, who are these yahoos, man?
Yeah, talking about stuff. Who are these guys? So today, we're going to answer that question.
So, Chris, tell me about Chris Brewer.
Okay, so short version. I was born in California, city boy.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm not proud of it, but you know, it is what it is. And didn't have a hunting background. My dad fished. We trout fished some. We camped some, but there was no hunting per se in there. But we would come to Arkansas on vacation because that's where all my dad's family lived. And my uncle had a place in Milltown, super nice area. Well, we would go out there and he had fishing ponds and 3-wheelers, and we would ride, and I saw turkey and I saw deer for the first time ever. So that was the very first time that it clicked with me at the age of probably maybe 6 or so. And it's like, man, I just love being out in the country. And
right.
So for me, that was my one day I'm going to live in the country. That was kind of where it all flipped for me as far as that goes.
So that's where you got started, just kind of living outdoors.
Yeah, I just loved the outdoors. Yeah, so that was where it all kind of clicked for me. And then we ended up moving out here when I was 8.
So you came to Arkansas at 8 years old.
8 years old, yeah. We had a little place that had, I think it was about 15 acres. We bought a place out here, and still no hunting background whatsoever. But when we moved back here, I was riding in a camper in the back of a truck from California all the way to Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
I stayed in the camper. Well, my prized possession rode with me, which was my BB gun. So I can still remember it pretty vividly as the Mayflower moving truck was being unloaded with all of our furniture. I'm a little kid. I don't know what's in there. But anyway, right. They were unloading it. I grabbed the BB gun and started walking around the property. I come back about, I don't know, maybe an hour later. In the meantime, I found an old 5-gallon bucket. Well, I killed a 5-gallon bucket full of birds. And so
welcome to the country.
That was pretty much my first hunting experience, day one in Arkansas. And I'm sniping everything I can with my Daisy BB gun. So, and kind of been doing it ever since.
Right, you still snapping stuff with the Daisy? I mean,
if
whatever works.
It's a little more high powered gun now, but yeah, I still got the Daisy.
It's still a collector's item, probably.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And let's hear about your side.
Well, so for me, I would say I'm a country boy. We lived out in the country.
Yeah.
Our driveway was...
You were born into it.
Yeah. I mean, our driveway was a mile from any main road, and it was rough. And,
yeah.
So being outdoors was part of what we did.
Yeah.
I mean, you just, back in the day, you weren't allowed to sit in the house and watch TV or eat the food or nothing like kids today.
Yeah.
So it was like, go outside and find something to do. And, early on, that's pretty much what we respected.
Yeah.
Stay outdoors. And I loved it. I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine life any different than that.
Right.
The youngest of 2 boys, my brother Clint, he's 15 months older than me. We're nothing alike. But mom and dad, just good folks, raised us right. The country life people talk about. So,
yeah.
Always had a hunting history.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so my grandpa on my dad's side,
yeah,
he passed away when my dad was 14 years old. So I never met him, obviously. Right. But he was a renowned hunter, fisherman, and it was in his blood.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I feel like that is where a lot of who I am came from.
Right.
Because dad was a hunter, but not a lot.
And think about what it would mean to be a renowned hunter back in that day before Facebook pictures and cell phone pictures and everything else. If you're well known as a hunter back then, how good was he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was stories about the shots that he made on running deer with open sights, and just he was the guy.
Yeah,
and so I think it's kind of cool because I feel like some of him is in me. It's part of what my passion is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. I'm that guy that pretty much thinks about something hunting every day.
Yeah, no, we're alike when it comes to that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and so it's a passion, and that's kind of I'm just a normal kid that we weren't rich or anything. We just lived life.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Yeah.
I have no regrets from my childhood. So
well, that's a pretty good place to be. I
it's
think.
a place to be. So so as far as when did you actually get into hunting? You feel like?
Well, other than the BB gun experience, as I got older, so my dad he fished, but not bass fish, nothing like that. It was catfish. We fished for food.
Right.
And so it was kind of like when we were catfishing, don't be throwing rocks, don't be walking around watching poles. Well,
it was business.
I was more into the bass fishing side, so we would set out our poles for catfish, and then I'd be walking the banks trying to catch a bass, and which I'd get in trouble for. He didn't like that at all. But so he was more of a fisherman, never really hunted at all, period. But he got me a 20 gauge single shot shotgun for I think my 12th birthday, and I was constantly begging, like, I want to go hunt, I want to do this, want to do that. So I think me and him went rabbit hunting a couple times when the snow would fall, and we killed a few rabbits here and there. But the deer turkey side, it was not anything. He didn't know anything about it. It wasn't his thing. So at the age of 13, he finally gave in, and I got to actually go and hunt. And back then, the mountain that we lived by was kind of the Wild West, man. I mean, people were you could just kind of do what you wanted to. So I just took off walking, didn't know where, this is no cell phone, no map, no nothing. So I went up and sat down next to a tree, and there was like a little creek there. Like, deer would probably drink on a creek. I didn't know.
Right.
So I hunted that first time and started getting kind of dark. So I decided I better get out of here, and I'm starting to walk back towards, my house area, and I was sitting on my coat. So I forgot my coat, turned around and walked back up towards where the tree was at. And by this time it's getting pretty dark. And on my way back to get my coat, I met up with a doe, and I got so shook up and so nervous. She had to pull the hammer back on this gun. I probably had bird shot it. I don't even know. But anyway, that was my first encounter with a deer in the wild. And then I almost didn't find my way back home. Another story. But anyway, that was 13 was when I got to actually hunt, by myself.
Right.
But I mean, nothing ever really came of it. And then, from that turned into, I don't know, I was probably 16 or so, I bet. And I'd bought my own shotgun with hay hauling money, and I had a slug in it, and I was kind of more prepared, but I didn't set a whole lot. I would walk. And I ended up jumping a deer one evening. I did actually shoot it, and there was blood. No idea where I shot
Never found it.
It was like we just kind of looked at each other, and I shot. So that was my first shooting of a deer, probably about the age of 16.
Right.
And from there was a pretty large gap, 2, 3, 4 years that I just didn't,
Wasn't a part of your life?
Yeah, just didn't really mess with it a whole lot. I was into stereos and different things like that. So there's just a big gap there. I mean, and then I kind of started getting back into it again. And there was a little video store down in Hackett, a little town not too far from where we live.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go in there, and we just had like an old dial TV, it wasn't nothing special. So I would rent the VCR, and I would rent Roger Raglan
Oh, yeah.
videotapes.
Oh, Roger.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm watching this guy, like he's shooting deer that are jumping over him and everything else. So I'm like, I'm getting fired up. So
Jiminy Christmas.
yeah, exactly. So I kind of got back into hunting again, and I was working at a place in Van Buren, and there's an outdoor store there. So I got myself a crossbow, a deer stand with the old screw-in steps, and I was going up on the mountain in the middle of nowhere, and I was taking vacations during rifle season, really starting to get into it, but didn't really ever harvest an animal till, God, I don't know, I was out of school, 18, 19, and I shot a 6-point out of a deer stand I'd bought, and the stand's still there. It's ironic because at the time it wasn't my property, but I own it now. And I hung this stand, and it's probably about 9 foot off the ground, maybe.
Yeah, you went high, huh?
Yeah. Which is, it's pretty comical when you look at it. But I did harvest an animal out of it.
That's pretty cool.
So I crossbow hunted for a while. I mean, I wasn't super successful. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had several. I was in the woods a ton, but
success wasn't always there.
Success was rarely there, if ever. But the crossbow deal never killed a deer with a crossbow. It was an old Devastator, probably weighed like 60 pounds.
I had one of those.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah, it was loud, sounded like a shotgun going
off. Yep, absolutely.
So I had that and some guns here and there, but one of the first, it's kind of like I tell this story to my son sometimes. It's like I'm real big into bass fishing, or was. I'm not as big into it as I was before, but you would go buy a new lure, and for some reason you throw that new lure the first time, I was like, holy crap, man, I'm catching like a ton of fish. Well, I watched a Roger Ragland video, and he rattled in a buck. So the next day I was like, I'm going to buy some rattling horns.
Yep.
And I was on vacation, and take a vacation from the shop I was working at. Hit them rattling horns together, and I mean, a buck came flying in. I was sitting on the ground, run right past me, and out of my life, like, oh my God.
I'm doing this every time.
Yeah, this is a way to kill a deer. So I spent the whole week with a 7mm walking around the woods rattling, and never saw another buck.
Right. That's usually how that works.
So that was kind of my, intermediate teenage years. I was passionate about it, but I had no clue what I was doing. So, I mean, that's kind of chapter 2 for me. Let's hear your chapter 2 and see what you got going.
All right. So for me, just like we talked about, we lived out in the woods, and we had a family tradition that had dated well before us.
Yeah,
of deer camp, man. And so Dad took us, me and my brother, 4 and 5 years old, to deer camp. That was the first year we went. Of course, I don't remember a whole lot about that, but the really cool thing about deer camp is we would go and we would stay in an army tent, a huge army tent, big green army tent. And everyone stayed inside the army tent and slept on cots.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, and in the middle of the army tent was a potbelly stove, and that's how we stayed warm. And then off to one corner was a kitchen, and they had a full size stove in there. Everything was gas. It was really cool. And so you got breakfast, lunch, and dinner when it was served. Yeah. You were allowed to eat certain things. So over the years, that was my hunting experience as a child. So from 4 to say 15, we went to deer camp every year. Yeah. It was usually 2 to 3 days, depending on if Dad got it off or not, whatever the situation was. And I remember just as a kid, you looked forward to it because it was something totally different than anything else you did. Plus, there was a bunch of what I call old timers. Yeah. Stories were fantastic. I mean, it was always I love that. Yeah, it was always some kind of just entertaining story. We had some crazy dudes in camp, let me tell you. And there was probably, I don't know, there was 10 or so kids at least in the camp. And, you think about a bunch of guys sleeping all in the same tent, and, dude, I remember Dad would come in and wake us up super early in the morning and be like, I'm going to deer camp. Are y'all going? And we'd be like, yeah, we couldn't wait. And, back then, hardly any deer ever killed. Yeah. If somebody seen a deer, it was like, whoa. And then when somebody killed one, it was like the whole camp just gathered around and told stories. Oh, yeah. It was just super cool. And so that went on for several years, like I said. And then as the old timers started to pass, the camp got smaller and smaller. And then actually we kind of went away from the tent experience, all in one big tent, to satellite camps. You know, everybody's in the same area, but we stayed in our own tents and that kind of thing. And what started happening is the deer hunting got better.
Yeah.
You know, and you kind of told your story. Mine, I remember Dad cut me loose because we always went with Dad.
Sure.
And Dad would just essentially put us like 50 yards apart from him. You know, I mean, we thought we were on our own, but he could see us, you know. And one of the times I remember me and Clint, my brother, we're sitting like 50 yards apart and we're sitting over a pond. That was where we got to hunt. You know, you kind of had a designated hunting area.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we were sitting over the pond and I'm sitting on my butt, you know, and I'm kicking dirt and he's doing the same thing. Well, I look up and there's like an 8-point buck standing like 50 yards on the pond bank. And I had a gun, instead of shooting at it, I hollered at Clint and started pointing. And he's like, you know, I made him mad because I hollered at him.
Yeah.
He's like, what? And he's like looking at me, like shaking his head. And I'm like, there's a deer right there. So anyway, obviously we didn't get the deer. But so, you know, that was kind of our experience. That was my experience to the hunting, you know, early on. And, you know, it was just something super cool for me. I mean, and, you know, I've actually tried to carry that on to this day just because of how special it was.
And I got to experience that this year for the first time. There's a muzzleloader, and it's a special place for sure, especially with the history behind it and the, you know, the camaraderie and the conversations and the food and the bond you make with people. It's really cool.
To me, it's one of the positive sides of hunting
for sure.
That really didn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah.
You know, hunting gets this stigma put on it. You know, it's an enjoyable thing for men to do or women now for, you know, it's normal. But anyway, and going back to my first, what I remember, actual encounter with a deer, same kind of deal. Dad had cut me loose.
Yeah.
I went and sat by a tree because that's all you did back then.
Oh yeah.
I sat by a tree and it was called the mud hole stand. So it was like all the kids graduated to the mud hole stand. When you were ready to go to the mud hole stand, well, the deal was with the mud hole stand, it was right next to camp. And so, you know, you weren't far from somebody.
Yeah.
And so I remember sitting there and I remember hearing something coming. And I was like, what is that? You know, I had a 30-30 back then. That was cool too. Because I actually got a rifle, you know, and I think I was probably 13, 14, maybe. I mean, something like that.
Yeah.
Dad had left. He went to his spot. Clint had went to his spot. And I hear this noise and I look up and it's kind of like what you said. Here comes this deer running just like straight at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know. Well, he runs past me like within like 5 yards. I'm just like standing there holding my gun. Don't know what to do, you know. Well, he makes a loop and he runs in front of me full speed.
Yeah.
And then he spins around. And so the third time he ran by me, I hip shot at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never even raised the gun. I shot from here.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my gosh, you know, what could have happened? But anyway, so obviously didn't get that deer either. So, you know, fast forward a little bit, you know, I was probably, I think I was 18 before I took my first deer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of my chapter too. I mean, it's I feel like it was a rich heritage.
Yeah.
You know, but the growing up like that made deer camps so fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and so we didn't even hunt anywhere else. That was our hunting. And it was like 3 days a year.
Yeah.
And so I was up there 17, 18 before I start trying to hunt around the house.
Sure.
I can remember I had Dad say, hey, Dad, build me a stand. You were talking about having screw-in steps. Well, I had 2x4 screwed into a tree.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah. And then Dad had made me a little hang-on stand, you know, Dad's a welder.
Okay, yeah.
And I never forget it. I had a crossbow, Devastator. And this is one of the first times I hunted on our own place. It wasn't at deer camp. And it was bow season, you know, you could actually bow hunt.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so I remember going, I had checked this out. I was you talking about being ahead of my time. I went in there, I took a rake and I raked a trail all the way back to the main road so that I didn't make any sound. I thought I had it figured out, you know.
Yeah.
And I go down that trail, I'll come up in that stand and I got that massive, heavy Devastator crossbow. And I'm sitting there and I'll look to my left and here comes this big 8-point. Well, you know, he's big to me back then. And dude, he's going to walk 5 yards in front of me. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I remember I pulled down on that thing. And I was good with that crossbow. I practiced.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I could hit. And I remember looking, and I got right behind his shoulder. And then I remember taking my eye and looking, you know, make sure he's still there. Well, the whole time he's steady walking.
Yeah.
So when I dropped back down, I just pulled the trigger. I shot this far behind him.
Yeah.
Because I didn't adjust my. and he ran out there about 5 yards and turned and looked up at me in the tree, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know. So that was that's one of the most memorable that age encounters that I had where I didn't kill the deer, you know.
Yeah.
So
Figuring it out.
yeah. So that, you know, fast forward to 18, 19, you know, that's my stage 2, I would say.
Yeah.
So what about you on stage 3? I mean,
So yeah, I got some friends involved, and we would have, and not near as like a deer camp as what you had, but we would go like up on the mountain and like, we're going to do 3-day deer camp up here. And it would be like, we got pork and beans, you know, little handsaw for some wood, and we're gonna hunt all day, and then, you know, do that, which, you know, there's some funny stories about that, but you know, getting rained on and just soaking wet all night long, walking down the mountain to get to the Midland store, on and on and on. But again, no success really. So I mean, so fast forward past, you know, that into my gosh. So there was a pretty stale time there. I got into drag racing, just different hobbies that, you know, still fish a lot. Bass fish a lot of tournaments. I got into that whole deal for a while. So hunting wasn't really
forefront,
wasn't on the menu at the time. Thought about it a lot, you know, but you know, never really, not like I was fired up back in my teens. So I was able to buy some property where I'm still at right now. It was a small section of what we had the 40-acre project on. It was a little smaller section of that. And then I had permission to hunt on some land, you know, around that area. But I really got kicked off once I bought the land. So I bought like a 2-acre chunk, and then I bought like a 20-acre chunk. And once I got that 20-acre chunk, I started hunting, and I was actually seeing deer. So
motivation.
I wanted to go full archery. So I want to go archery. So I couldn't even tell you what it was. It was the cheapest PSE bow you could probably find with no let off, and felt like what was 90-pound pull. But I had some encounters with that bow. Never killed anything with that bow, but I had some encounters with it, and it's kind of like you were talking about. So I go back to, I didn't have the rattling horns, but I had like a rattling bag, and I was hunting to have a ladder stand. Hung a ladder stand up, and I had thrown out some like throw and grow stuff, which it basically it had turned into weeds. But anyway, long story short, I rattled in this buck, and he came within range from where I was at. Like, I'm talking, you know, no rangefinder, but I had pins set up on there.
Right.
And I'm guessing he was probably 25, 30 yards. And I was so shook up over this. And I can remember today, it was a wide 8-point. It wasn't very big, probably 115-inch deer, but his horns were like really white. And I could see him coming through the woods. And I was so nervous that I made like 6 attempts to draw this bow. And I could not get it drawn back. So that was my first archery experience. And like, hey, I think I can do this. Like, this is something. And it was, you know, the feeling that it gives you.
Oh, yeah.
When you're that close to an animal like that. And believe it or not, it never spooked me. Trying to pull that bow back, he never spooked at me. So,
so he just cruised on through and left your life
cruised
forever.
on through and left me alone. I didn't even want to try to call him back in because I was so weak that there was nothing I could really do with him. So, and I would say that season was probably my highlight. And then the next season, kind of same scenario, only I was hunting a different area, and I got into climbing. So I was in my climber. I was hunting a pretty good trail that, you know, was no game cameras, no nothing. Just I was hunting a trail that I thought was pretty good. There were some rubs up above me. Deer walks by, a little smaller than the last one, and I'm 20 foot up in a tree now, so I'm like, you know, I feel invincible up there. I can't be spotted. Buck walks right down this tree. It was a cold morning. Drew back on it and got the got the thing drawn back successfully this time, a little more calm, and let an arrow fly, and I think it went 15 foot over his back. I never looked through the peep.
Yeah, right.
I drew back, and
panic.
I was looking at the deer and put a pin on him and let it fly. So there was my second version of that never really happened. But, it inspired me a lot because I was having opportunities.
Yeah, you were getting on them.
Yeah. So I felt like I could kind of read the land here. I'm seeing sign. I'm doing this. So, a few years, I'd killed that 6-point prior to that with a gun, but I really wanted to do something with archery. So, when I really, really got fired up is when I bought that land. And gosh, I had the land for a while and just hunted it, and hunted around it, but decided to do a food plot, on that land. And then that's when you start really getting into the land management side
Yes.
of it. And,
Absolutely.
it's pretty amazing how you can manipulate animals once you started getting food involved and stuff like that. So then my mind kind of flipped to that, as far as this can be done a little bit easier. It's still a ton of work, but I mean, to that point, and gosh, it was me and my business partner, we kind of went in together on like, I got the property, but let's pay somebody to come in here and clean out this area and all that stuff. And it wasn't, like I said, it's probably 3/4 of an acre or something like that, food plot, but it changed it up a bunch. And even then I didn't really know what I was doing, but
Sure.
It came at a price monetarily a little bit, but then, we had so many good memories, it's kind of funny because we had 2 ladder stands, and like we'd literally be like looking at each other like, hey, if it comes on the right hand side, you kill it. If it comes on the left hand side, I'll kill it.
Right on.
And we still weren't really up on wind or approach or act. None of the things
Sure.
that we talk about today. We were just hunting and having a good time, and it's like, and the clothes we had, not even close to being prepared for, wintertime weather. So it's like, you can only set about an hour because you might die if you set
Freezing to death.
set longer than that. So that's pretty much my chapter 3 is like how it progressed from, a bucket full of birds to now I want to get into food plotting and stuff like that. So
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So for me, kind of I'll tell you our aha moment. So I'm 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
I've never killed a deer.
yeah,
I've went every year since I was 4.
yeah,
But, that wasn't uncommon down there where we went. There just wasn't a lot of deer. But at this time, you would go and you might see 5 or 6 does. You might see something and just not kill it.
right.
Well, I went to work at a place called Outdoor Living Center. Right. I was a junior in high school. And
Yeah,
I was working there on the weekends, and then during the summer I worked full time. And I got a buddy. His name was Jerry Tumlison.
yeah,
Well, I would be talking about deer camping, how we're going and all that. And he told me one day, he's like, if you want to go hunt deer, you need to go with me. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it.
challenge accepted.
Yeah. And so I'm like you. I went to a pawn shop,
Yeah.
bought my first compound bow.
Yeah.
It was a Bear. I paid $90 for it, and it was equipped.
Yeah.
It had everything.
Ready to roll.
It didn't 100% fit me, but that was okay. And then what I did every day was shoot. I'd get off work, come home, shoot. And I got to where I could stack them, And Jerry's like, all right, let's go. So we went to South Arkansas, Hamburg, way down south.
yeah.
Yeah, way down there. And he sets me up in a tree. And so here's what I learned right off the bat from Jerry. You got to climb trees.
Yeah,
And we didn't climb trees.
Right.
We were ground setters, man. And we just, we didn't have much success like that. So I killed my first deer with my buddy Jerry. And I was hooked after that, man.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get your first deer, it's like, wow. And you do it with a bow.
yeah. That's
That was cool, And I immediately went home and my dad hadn't killed that, or he killed when he was a kid, but he hadn't killed anything that whole time. My brother hadn't killed anything.
yeah,
I was like, listen, guys, we're climbing trees.
yeah,
It revolutionized. After that, after the climbing trees, we all got climbing stands, everybody started taking deer.
Yeah.
Everybody. Dad was getting deer. Clint was getting deer. I was getting deer. And it's like, this is awesome.
yeah,
And so for, I would say my early 20s there, I was about filling all my tags. You know, it's like however many tags I got.
Yeah.
I
I
filled
want
them.
all of them.
And the thing is too, that I've always been, or not always been, but we weren't when we were young, but when I got married to my wife and everything, she's a cook, man.
Yeah.
And we lived on deer. And to this day, I don't buy beef
Yeah.
because we're planning on eating deer. That's, I mean, we have it ground, we eat the steaks, we eat
Yeah.
the roast, everything.
Yeah.
You know, so that's it's kind of a cool thing to think you can actually kind of live off the land. It's not something that's processed in a,
Yeah.
you know
well,
what I mean?
I honestly believe that it's so much more healthy for you than
Oh, yeah.
than especially store bought. I eat beef still, but it's you know it's a farmer's cow. It's not something you get from Walmart or whatever.
Right.
But there's nothing like breaking out the deer meat, you know. And I'll be honest, when I throw some deer steaks or something on, it's like I think about that hunt, you know,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the animal, or you're constantly giving homage to the animal for feeding your family, and you know, it's like it's a process for me. I dig it.
Absolutely. So, you know, for me, it became like I think a lot of hunters are, is we want venison.
Yeah,
We want meat in the freezer. And that style of hunting slowly progressed into the kind of hunter I am now.
sure.
You know, I am a big buck guy because I know that between my daughter, my son, and my wife, we're going to have venison.
Yeah,
So the need to put meat in the freezer is not as big for me.
right.
And the challenge of hunting the biggest boy out there and as smart as he is and all his tricks, that's what drives me now.
Yeah,
So that, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I am like I am
yeah,
to this day, you know. And, you know, you learn good and bad of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I took a butt whipping on a regular basis, you
Yeah.
know. And kind of like you were talking about, for me, my first food plot was in the year 2000.
Yeah,
And I, you know, I'm a fortunate guy in that I'm on my land around my family's land.
Yeah.
So we get a pretty good block of,
Yeah.
you know, so you can control it a little bit. Obviously neighbors are the big thing, but
oh yeah,
Whitetail Institute had a video
yeah,
out
yeah,
and I put in the Imperial Whitetail Clover. And I remember, dude, after I planted that for the first time, it was funny. I had a climbing stand that I had hung and I put sticks in so I didn't have to climb and be loud. And I climbed up in the sticks and I got in there and I think it was like New Year's, somewhere in there.
yeah,
And I was filming for the first time.
There
I
you
used
go.
to try to start filming my
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And I remember I fell asleep, like sound asleep.
I did that.
I woke up out of sleep and there's a 6-point out there in the middle of the food plot. And I was like, this is the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever. And I actually chose not to take that deer. I had taken several deer up to that point, but
Yeah.
that was the first time on my property that I had attracted a deer
Yeah.
to me that I could have taken. And
You
I,
actually started managing
Yes.
your property at that moment.
after that, it was like gung ho on the management side. I want to learn everything there is to learn about food plots, and so you know that was 23 years ago. So
Yeah.
progressed to now. You know, I think back, and that was a learning experience for me all the way.
Oh,
I
for sure.
It's like every year I would, don't do that if you're going to mess that up, you know. And so that's kind of cool about the hunting experience. It's like
Yeah.
you're always learning.
Yeah,
You've never arrived. You think, when the guys think, oh man, I can go kill a mature buck every year.
yeah.
Then you've arrived.
Those people that do that are classified as killers. Not
Yes,
hunters. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Assassins.
Yeah.
Because,
There's a different caliber.
I mean, we're sitting here in Arkansas and, you know, Arkansas has become better because of what I think the 3-point rules has made it better, but
Yeah.
it's still not up there with the Midwest.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? You're not going to kill an average deer here is not 150.
You know how we hunt, but it's like, man, if it's 130, 140 inch deer, that's what I'm after every year, you know, try to get
Yep.
something in that caliber. And, you know, a lot of times you don't kill a deer because you're willing to pass all these other deer to,
Absolutely.
you know, which is, you know, that's the choice. Not saying anything is wrong with, you know, I say kill whatever makes you happy. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, there's guys out there that get to hunt on the weekends and that's it.
yeah,
And they may get 2 or 3 weekends and that's it. And
Yeah.
hey, if you want to feed your family,
that's right.
more the merrier,
If you're a
man.
gun only guy,
Yep.
I mean that cuts your time down a bunch. So
Yep.
that's one of the main reasons why I bought a crossbow when I was younger, because like you can hunt all the way to the end of February. Are you kidding me? Like it's great. Why would you not do this?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so fast forward a little bit. So we're both hunters now. We've both harvested deer.
Yeah.
So do you remember when our paths crossed?
You know, we were just talking about that earlier, and it's like, what did we say, 2015-ish maybe?
15.
We kind of started getting into the texting back and forth.
Yeah, 'cause,
and,
you know,
we went to school together and everything, but it's like we had some gaps in there. So
Yeah, you're about 4 or 5 years ahead of me, I think, something
so
like that.
we didn't really communicate a whole lot.
No, I was just scared of you. I remember you was a lot bigger than I was.
reputations.
Yeah, the reputation. But no, I remember I was hunting. I was going after that buck called Freak Show.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about it, sending you pictures. And
Yeah.
I remember after that, you know, I got lucky and got that deer. And it was like, you know, after that, me and you kind of like, hey man, let's start doing this stuff together.
Yeah.
And I had already started the Camo Family Outdoors thing.
Yeah.
And a little short story about that. The Camo Family Outdoors started for me when I took my 5-year-old son, Luke,
Yeah.
and I took my buddy Richie, and we got a ground blind.
Yeah.
And I roosted a turkey the night before. And I took Luke down there, who couldn't even really hold the shotgun up.
Yeah.
And we had 3 cameras back before there was 3 cameras.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, you know, little handhelds. And we had 3 of those on tripods. Richie was filming. It was cool.
Yeah.
And he kills that turkey, and it was like, dude, I have got to do this. This is the coolest thing I've ever done. You know, I love hunting. You put filming on top of that.
Yeah. Well, I told you, you know, I was Googling, you know, like, because, you know, my son was a little bit behind yours, like, you know, how to take a youth hunting, you know, because he's real fidgety and everything. And it's like, I actually pulled up that video.
You found that one on YouTube.
Yeah. It popped right up on there. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, like that, you know, you always have that memory too. Like,
yeah. So 15, say, you guys kind of got into the filming side with us.
Yeah.
I remember you went and got self-filming stuff.
Yep.
And then we kind of started going to Missouri together. We made a couple trips to Missouri together. And that was a lot of fun.
A lot of public land. So that's a whole other aspect to our hunting deal is, you know, you want to talk about some wading through some muck and mud and creeks and battling people and, you know.
You earned it.
Yeah. Hunting in the cold that you experience up there is not like the cold here. I don't care what people say. Like
nasty.
It's brutal. And, you know, I seen 2 giants up there and passed a lot of deer, you know. Gosh, Missouri, that's a whole other world up there.
We were up there almost in Iowa, and like you said, it was bone chilling, man.
Yeah.
There'd be mornings it would be in the teens and like 25-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
And it don't matter how much you got on, dude.
No,
it's going to eat you after a while.
And doing all day sets up there, and and then you got in on a lease up there.
Yeah.
And then it kind of progressed into Joe and I getting on a lease not too far down the road.
Yep. Absolutely. You remember we both took our kids. Our boys are both named Luke, by the way. So there's some
Luke and Luke.
Luke and Luke.
Yeah.
And I was on my lease, and y'all were on your lease.
Yeah.
And it was youth season up there.
Yeah.
And we were texting back and forth, and your son has success. And I just remember that whole thing was just cool as heck, man.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing is, it's kind of neat for me and you, and we're kind of this way in the way we hunt, is it was work. Dude, you walked and you hiked and you know, there was nothing easy about it. And them boys were right there with us.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I think that's a kind of a life lesson, man.
Oh, for sure. It makes I've always said that it makes a kid different whenever they do that there. Because, I mean, I made him hiking his old stuff, and that particular weekend that he killed that big deer, we had 3 hunts and we had to get back home. It was an awful weekend, and we set up that evening for the morning for one wind. That evening we tore down, or that afternoon we tore down and moved across the creek or the swell there for another wind. That night in the dark we tore down, set up for the next morning because the wind was going to change. And that morning, you know, he harvested that deer. So
it's pretty awesome.
Hiking all the way in, 3 different setups, you know, on minimal sleep. And, you know, I think he's a big Skittle guy, so I think he was living off Skittles and, you know, 1 water bottle that you couldn't, don't, you know, it's getting good. Don't mess with your water bottle. So we could probably do another whole episode on kid hunting. So
And we will.
yeah,
I can assure you, because I'm just going through all these thoughts in my mind.
yeah,
you know.
it could go on for
Yes.
a long time.
So that really I think that kind of bonded us a little bit as far
Yeah.
as the hunting side of things. And
Yeah.
we thought a lot alike as far as how we
yeah.
hunted, and
Yeah.
we researched and tried to learn. And
Well, I remember my business in Greenwood, and sometimes we would get slow. We always had my bow on the back of my, in my vehicle, and I'd set out targets. And I remember texting you one day, and I was like, "Hey, stop by the shop, man. We're shooting bows." I'm like, what? Yeah, we're shooting bows. And nothing going. I can see if somebody pulls up or whatever. And I remember asking you quite a bit about Camo Family Outdoors that day, because I was,
Yeah.
I was familiar with it, but not too familiar with it. So that's when I really kind of dedicated, like, I'm gonna get some of this stuff on video. And it's like, I have a ton of video, not all of it kills. And then I have some deer that have been shot and didn't die on video. And
you had a really nice buck that got away, man.
yeah, so that's when I first kind of got into it. And it's tough, man. It's, the deer I harvested this year, I would have loved to have that on video, but it's a whole, if you can pull that off, I mean, it's something, especially with archery equipment. I mean, it's a big deal.
Agreed. I mean, and that's the thing too. If you can pull it off and the footage is good and everything was on and the timing was perfect and he was in the frame.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's so much stuff, man.
So cameraman is like, that would be ideal, but unfortunately, we're normally chasing different animals. So
Yes.
it's like, and we always talk about, man, if you think you're getting close to him, like, let me know and I'll come sit with you. But I mean, you can never know that, it's like
it's hunting.
Yeah.
Even with as good a setups as we have that we've worked towards, in the 40 acre project with you. And, and, I mean, it's work, man.
Yeah.
And it's not no guarantee punch your ticket. I mean,
Oh no.
You may tag and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I was kind of that way even this year. I was like,
I remember.
I've got a bunch of bucks, man. They're just
whipping me.
they're whipping me up pretty bad. I was trying to figure out what the problem was, and but it goes back to, I'm willing to have those tags in my pocket, you know what I mean, in order to, because I didn't want to shoot this buck or that buck, or I had a few that I would have shot, but I just couldn't get it done. So for one reason or the other,
Well, it worked out okay for you. I mean, you did all right. You killed the biggest buck around here, I think. Anybody's ever killed like a 176 when officially scored, something like that. That's good in a pinch. I mean,
that's not too bad.
That's a big buck anywhere, brother. That's what that is.
Yeah.
But no, that's
was,
cool.
That was super special. That's probably, I said it once we got it back. That's one of those bucking, lifetime bucks that you may not ever do that again. But, unless you do go north, which we may need to do that soon.
We need to do that again. I still think about that, man, a lot. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
That was a lot of fun. And I think what made it fun is the work.
Yeah.
And, people are like, if it's easy and you go in and do it and take care of it, you don't remember it like you do when you work your tail off.
No question,
man. I mean, so.
Yeah, no question.
That's super cool. So, and I think for me, that helped our relationship grow when we worked together on a project, and then you had success, and we were both there to share it together.
For sure.
You called me on the recovery, and it was like, dude, this is insane.
Yeah. I think I just did something, but I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it went down. I'm going to wait on you.
No matter how many you kill, right? You still have that same.
Oh yeah, especially if you're a bow hunter.
You're jittery. You're scared. You don't know where it all went, and so since that progression of our relationship, it's like we're constantly texting, back and forth, this idea, that idea about hunting, or maybe this is the problem. And then we actually took some online classes a couple of years back, some forestry stuff, some hunting stuff, food plotting stuff.
Yep.
Just to try to be sharper at the game we're playing here, and maybe be able to pass some of that information on to other people. But what came out of that was the 40 acre project, and new food plots on your place, corridors, all these things that, again, it's like we're constantly talking about this stuff and
Yeah.
how to change it up. And it's like, we're still doing stuff to our properties as we speak,
yeah.
different things that we're doing. So
Yeah, I think we're coming up pretty quick. We're going to do some more fruit trees on your place.
yeah, do a little more on the orchard side of it. We're going to do, I've got some more hinge cutting I want to do to get myself some more side cover there. So yeah, we'll be chatting that up, showing some video, doing a couple shows and some stuff like that. So
Constantly, what's going on in the woods, we're
Yeah.
gonna be showing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So, and that's kind of why we got into the management side of it and offering that to people.
Yeah.
If we can help them out.
yeah, and for me, it's like, and I say this constantly, I love doing the management stuff. It's almost as fun and maybe as fun as the hunt side.
I'm with
It's like
you.
when hunting season's over, it's like, man, you kind of know when your last hunt's coming up. Like, I'm gonna give it one more shot on this buck or whatever. Their horns are fixing to fall off, but then it's kind of right back in. It's
Yeah.
like after I kind of cleaned up some of my stuff. I still got cameras running, but I picked up and cleaned up and, did some stuff. I immediately hop on the tractor and I'm like, hey, I'm working on this area, try to get some more cover into it so we get some switchgrass in it. So it's like, we're working, we're talking about it. We're doing
Constantly bouncing ideas off each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Access and entrances and
Yeah.
and all of that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I think it's cool that me and you kind of got together and we share the same passions. We have a lot of same ideas.
No, we do. Yeah.
And then, we're constantly saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think
Yeah.
about that? And
yeah.
I think it makes you better as a hunter.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well,
it's super helpful too. Plus, it's like, there's so many, like I said, you're never done learning this deal. So, you asked me a question, I asked you a question. It's like, I don't know, let's do some research on it. Next thing you know, we're texting back and forth on this and that. And it's like, we make each other better land managers, better hunters.
Right.
And then, you'll think of a lot of stuff like, oh, I never even thought of that,
Right.
and vice versa.
Vice versa. Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of how this podcast thing come about.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Let's sit down and talk about stuff
Yeah.
because I think that we have some information that might help somebody.
Yeah.
And we're always learning.
Yeah.
And I know you well enough to know that you're going to do research.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to do research. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like we get together and we're like, hey, did you find out this? Did you find out that?
Yeah.
And we learn together. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's pretty
definitely.
cool.
Well, it's like, I have a touch of OCD and we both want to be competitive and good at, the chosen sport. And I don't care if it's shooting the bow or shooting a basketball or hunting big bucks. I mean,
Yep.
I want to be as good as I can be at it. It's like,
Absolutely.
if I'm going to get up early in the morning and get out there and put in the time on the property, and if it's hunting public land or private land, I'm going to give myself the very best opportunity, and like all this stuff leads up to that, I feel.
Oh yeah. And I think it helps you in life. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, no question.
When you approach it that way and you work hard,
Yeah.
it's in every aspect of your life gets better, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're still learning. We're not,
Oh, yeah.
we
No.
have not arrived.
Yeah, no, and we were talking about that earlier. I was like, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but the stuff that I have tried and I have done, and what doesn't work and what does work, you got to look through your peep sight if you shoot a deer. I know that doesn't work.
You
so,
learned from
yeah.
that one, right? That was one you remembered and you learned.
Yeah, so I always look through my peep sight now when I'm trying to harvest an animal. So that's you can pick up stuff from there. But so yeah, and on the property management side, we'll talk about it again. Whitetail Property Management. You can find us on Facebook.
Yep.
So we can come out and look at your place. I'll ask all the right questions and come up with a good plan. And we're also offering, an online service, or we'll have several phone conversations with the client,
Right.
feel them out, hunting pressure, get aerial photos of their land, and we can kind of approach it from that way too. If the expense to travel there is too far or whatever, but we can do plug and play to where we design it and we do all the work, from food plots to hinge cuts to whatever, or we can set it up, give you a final product, and you can DIY it, or we can do the online version and
Give you the advice.
give you the advice from there. So that's always on the table for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we have this is the Hunt Experience.
Yep.
And we have a YouTube now.
Yep.
So a lot of this material will be
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking about transitioning from camo to the hunt experience
Yeah.
as we grow a little bit
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So a lot of this information will be there.
Yeah.
So guys, go like, submit, or is
Yeah.
it subscribe,
Like, share.
whatever the words are.
Yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and kind of get us rolling here. And then, like I said, if there's any questions, you can find us on the Hunt Experience, Camel Family Outdoors, and Whitetail Property Management. And there's phone numbers, emails on there, and
Give us a shout.
yeah, give us a shout.
Well, we want to thank you guys for listening today. That's going to wrap it up for us. Have a good one.
Yep.